This information you're about to hear is totally the thought and ideas of Gary C.Clement and the Gary Clement Radio Show podcast. We are in no way, shape, or form affiliated with the parties the story is about or was interviewed for. Parts of this content is not owned or the property of the Gary Clement Radio Show podcast, and this information is strictly our opinion. This content is for information purposes only. Please enjoy the information. Welcome to this week's episode of the Gary Clement Radio Show podcast. A few days ago, the Associated Press released new information that relates to the city of Memphis, Tennessee, and the murder of Tyre Nichols. According to the story, retired Memphis Police Department Recruitment Director Alvin Davis said the department was struggling to bring in qualified employees to be police officers. They simply increased incentives and lowered the standards for those whom were hired. If you can remember back some years ago, the requirements were pretty much the same around the country. Number one, previous military experience. Number two, previous police work. And number three, college credits or a college graduate, and possibly some other things as well. Well, today, the requirements have changed a little bit. Number one, 2 years of work experience, meaning any kind of work, such as McDonald's, Wendy's, Walmart, or whatever. And again, this is according to the report from the Associated Press. And number two, applicants with criminal records are able to apply. And number three, the police academy lowered the requirements by dropping the mandatory requirements for physical fitness drills, saying that a lot of the, current staff were unable to run and compete perfectly, in their physical drills or whatnot for the job. And the incentives for the new recruits was a $15,000 signing bonus and a $10,000 relocation allowance. So that alone, I'm sure, got the attention of these officers to possibly be a police officer. The other problem here is that they also have a shortage of supervisors for the job. If you notice, at the scene of the Tyre Nichols incident, there were no supervisors on site to take control of the situation at all. It's reported that there are 125 supervisor positions open with the Memphis Police Department. That's just incredible. According to the article, young officers were inexperienced and the chief knew about this. The chief also knew that the city was a hot spot for crime and murder. Throughout all of this, the open positions stayed unfilled. They were looking for trouble, just open and just free for trouble, I guess. It's also reported to say the officers admitted to taking the job of a police officer because of the incentives. This is not just bad, but very embarrassing for any police department who has to admit or deal with a situation like this. So what happens to Memphis, Tennessee after this situation? What happens to Chief Davis after this situation? What are your thoughts? What are your concerns? We want to know how you feel. So please email us at gccpresents@yahoo.com. To present his views about the Tyre Nichols situation in Memphis, Tennessee is Reverend John Cradle Sr., who's the pastor of the St. Joseph CME Church in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Tell us a little bit how you feel about this situation with Tyre Nichols in Memphis, Tennessee. When you first heard about this, what were your initial thoughts, please?
Sure. I can recall that on January the 7th of 2023, a young man by the name of Tyre Nichols was just a few minutes away from his home when he was stopped by the Memphis Police Department. And during that stop, he was accosted, he was beaten. He was beaten as if there was a vengeance. He was beaten brutally. And when I first heard of it, before I even saw the video, of course, my first mindset took me back to Rodney King. It took me back to when he was stopped and he was beaten profusely by white police officers. So my mindset was that once again, another black man has been accosted by white officers who have abused their authority and they have once again beaten and attacked a black man. Of course, to my surprise, when I saw the video and I saw that it was black men that beat another black man mercilessly until he even passed out, I was appalled. I was appalled in the time lapse in which EMT workers were called to the scene to attend to his wounds. But how a simple traffic stop would turn into the beating of a 29-year-old black man that 3 days later, because of the internal injuries, the internal bleedings, and so forth, would lead to his death. I was honestly appalled. And as well as when I looked at it, I also examined, why is it that we have such hate for one another? Why is it that as God promotes us in this system that we're born in, and we're given some of the same rights and privileges as those that oppress us, that we turn around and do the same thing to ourselves as they did to us? This was a complete abuse of authority. Black, white, it was just simply abuse of one's authority. And what interests me most of all is the mindset of these black men who stopped Tyre Nichols. Why, first of all, when they stopped him, they said that he was swerving, he was driving erratically, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. But when they stopped him, their mindset was, first of all, this man was maybe a criminal and that he had did something illegal. And so they approached him with the same mindset as what maybe a white officer or white officers may have approached him with. It was a self-hatred and suspicion for this young man before they even got the opportunity to truly stop and investigate or ask him questions or whatever. He was instantaneously a suspect. It goes to show you as well as how in the police department, in many cases, not all cases, is that black officers indoctrinate that same mindset as white officers when dealing with the black population. When they stop us, it's automatically we are a suspect. It's automatically that we don't live according to the rules of the system that we're born in. It's always, they always expect that or suspect that we don't honor the system to which we are called to live by. And these 5 men, when they stopped Tyre Nichols, not only did they infringe upon his basic human rights, they embarrassed us as a black race. They totally embarrassed us. And when I heard one of my brothers in Christ, one of my brothers on the battlefield for the Lord said, he said that it was more than that. It was even more personal to him because he was a Greek, and one of these brothers was a Greek brother who had did this to another man. And one of their precepts is that they don't do harm to another brother. And so it's very interesting as well is how Memphis Police Department, how quick they responded to these 5 officers, how quickly these 5 officers were fired from the force. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. When we look at how Rodney King, how we had to go through periods of trials before these men were even put on administrative probation or anything, but it's very interesting how they dealt instantaneously with our brothers on the police department. But when it comes to white officers and their offenses against black people, how slow they are to respond and try to bring some level of justice in an unjust situation. This whole situation itself, I thought was very interesting. But again, my heart was broken for Tyre Nichols' family, for his children that won't have a father, for the mother and father that lost a son, for the grandparents that lost a grandson, and for us who lost something lost a person who may have had a gigantic contribution to the world. And even in this situation, I would say that Tyre Nichols' death is not in vain. Because what it brings to the forefront, it brings to us an understanding or a mirror of how we deal with one another. That hate within the race itself. There was hatred that I could stop any man, particularly one that looks like me, particularly one who has gone through the same trials and tribulations as I have gone through, but to stop him and beat him near to death. Mm-hmm. We have been socially indoctrinated into a system just like our Israelite brothers and sisters did thousands of years ago. When God brought them out of bondage, as we know, and God established them, they were doing well. They were being fruitful and as far as the riches of life. And all of a sudden, they started treating each other bad. They started treating each other like their captors. And we can find that in the book of Hosea. Well, the word of God says he calls them cows of Bashan. In other words, they were living off the fat of the land, and they were treating those who may have not been as prosperous as them. They were treating them poorly. And we are doing the same thing as our Israelites, brothers and sisters. From the civil rights movement to where we are today, there are those who have given their lives for the liberties that we have today. Mm-hmm. There are those that died for the liberties that we have today. Mm-hmm. And what do we do in return? We treat each other like our oppressors. As a black man of 64 years of age, and hopefully to be turning 65 this year, this skin tone of mine, every day I wake up in it. Mm-hmm. Every day when I walk outside of my door, there is something about the pigmentation of my skin that offends certain people. Mm-hmm. Why is it that we are hated by the whites? Why is it that we now have a conflict between us and Latinos? Why is it that the Asians hate us? Why is it that people particularly target their hate and resentment towards people of color? And then to turn it all around, we ourselves, we treat each other like those who oppress us. Yeah, these 5 men of color, these 5 men that look like me, they were a disgrace to the uniform and their code of honor, to which the way they were sworn to do, and they are a discredit to God and how God has lifted them and lifted us and lifted our families. And of course, they are a disgrace to our black community. Mm-hmm. That is my view concerning Tyre Nichols and his death.
Right. Okay. So when it comes to our young people, what's your advice to them when when they actually encounter police, or have situations or traffic stops? What is your advice or whatnot to our young people to stay in time?
As I tell my son, a young black man who's been stopped numerous occasions, not doing anything wrong, basically simply because he's black. We have to teach our young children, our young men, in particular black men, how to live from a traffic stop. And the first thing that I would advise any youth or young adult is, if you have a phone and with a phone camera on, turn the phone on. They don't have to see it, but they can hear the conversation as you're recording. You can set it to the side. Place your hands on the steering wheel. Roll down that window. And when that officer approaches you, make sure that you say, yes, sir, or whatever, yes, sir, sergeant, whatever officer. Be respectful and answer their questions. And again, you can advise them, let them know that I am recording. Let them know that I am recording. But make sure that they are mannerable. Make sure that they put their hands on a 10 and a 2 o'clock position on their steering wheel, have their window down, and be ready to respond to the officer. Again, have that phone on. He don't have to see it, but you can let him know, I am recording this stop.
Okay, cool, okay. So what is the outcome of this Tyre Nichols case that you would like to see, going forward as far as the black community is concerned?
Well, I think one of the problems is that a lot of our police officers are not from our communities. So I do believe in community policing. I believe that it would be wonderful if we could have substations in a lot of these communities, not just black communities, but in our communities, where officers get the opportunity to know the people in which they are called to protect and to serve. One of the problems that we're having with police and the black community is that there's a lack of an intimate relationship with the police department and our communities. And a lot of times when they respond to our communities, there's a lot of negativity. But that's because a lot of the times there's not that relationship between the police department and our communities. What this will do also is, and if you have an officer to speak up for you, for example, Tyre Nichols, if he got stopped, he said, yes, I stay in so-and-so district. Yes, officer so-and-so works in my district. You can ask him of me if you want to. You have someone that can speak up for you. So I think that we're coming to a point where we need to have more community policing and communication between the police force itself to help identify people. This young man was not a suspect for anything. Mm-hmm. But had someone known of him, had someone, when they stopped him, could run to a system, and he's a community advocate, he's in this community, then they would have seen that this young man had no malice in his heart. He was just going home. So my suggestion would be a more intimate relationship between the police department and our communities. And again, I'm not just singling out black communities, but particularly those that are socially, economically deprived. Because as we know statistically, this is where a lot of our crimes happen. We know that hurt people, mm-hmm. Bottom line.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So now just give people your contact information where they can reach you. They can, possibly visit your church. Give that information,
Sure.
Please.
Yes, I am Pastor John A. Cradle Sr., the pastor of St. Joseph C.M.E. Church, Christian Methodist Episcopal Church at 510 West Rosemary Street in the heart of Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I can be reached at 919-930-2303. We do Facebook Live on Sundays. You can go to Facebook Live to St. Joseph. And also, there's other information that I can pass out later that we also do Wednesday Bible studies via Zoom. We do Tuesdays and Thursday devotionals as well. And we have contact information for that for those who would like to join us for about a 30 to 40 minute time slot of inspiration and the Word of God. We ask that you would join us. Again, we're on Facebook Live on Sundays. You can see us at St. Joseph CME on Facebook and catch us live. We also are doing Zoom Live as well.
Today, we are praying for the Tyre Nichols family and friends in that community, that the situation creates a way forward that allows us all to grow. As we know, there's new information being released every day, several times a day, and it's appreciated to see people such as Attorney Ben Crump, Reverend Al Sharpton and his Action Network, the NAACP and the Black Lives Matter movement, and other organizations move forward to continue fighting for our righteous black people. So there you have it, folks. Again, this was our way of addressing the Tyre Nichols murder in Memphis, Tennessee, and what the situation brings to our communities and our lives. For all of you interested in learning more about the Gary Clement Radio Show podcast, please visit www.amazon.com and order my book, The Gary Clement Radio Show, When Strong Afro-American Men and Women Stand Up. It covers everything about us and features a variety of Afro-American personalities who speak out about the importance of education and literacy in the black community. Well, we thank you for tuning into our podcast. Please send us your email address so we can contact you when we do new releases and new episodes, as well as projects, to gccpresents@yahoo.com. And also, if you're interested in submitting any materials or want to get in touch with us, please do so by simply sending an email to gccpresents@yahoo.com. That's G as in Gary, C as in Charlie, presents@yahoo.com. So until next time, do take care. And this is a G2 Network Media production.